Kia ora, welcome to the Open Lab podcast.
Open Lab, the podcast.
Where we will be opening up conversations about the transition between university life and the design industry.
We give emergent design thinkers experience on all things design and arm them with the tools to hit the ground running.
You're with Connor,
And Michael.
and we're here to help you through this transition.
Kia ora, welcome back. This is going to be an exciting episode, number 3.
Exciting because yet again we have another guest. I'd love to introduce Christina. Welcome.
Hey guys, how's it going?
It's good. We're so excited to have you back. For anyone that doesn't know Christina, I'd love for you to introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about you and your whole journey from uni to your job now.
Okay, well, I'm from Nelson, the old humble town, and then came to uni 4 years ago. I've just finished last year in 2018 doing visual communication design. During my last semester of uni, I got to work at Open Lab longer than expected.
We got you in initially as an intern.
Yeah, like a 1 month.
Yeah, which was like a 1 month thing, but we had so much work on at that stage that I think we actually got you in prior to your even month. Actually, I think you were in October, which was really the crunch day for your
The
major
busy
project. So we gave you a little bit more leeway in the other months.
And then you just couldn't get rid of me.
I know, we just got you back on
You're
so
still
many projects.
So yeah, I was at Open Lab for a wee bit, and then through Open Lab I got my first grad job / internship. So it started in December. I was actually really lucky because I was working part-time retail, and then I told my boss that I wanted to leave. And then I started my internship in the same week, and I worked there for 2 weeks and then had Christmas break off, and then I'm working there until the end of June this year.
Basically, you had finished your internship with Open Lab, finished your major project, you had exposure, everything was probably go, crazy, and then all of a sudden you had to quit your 2 degrees job and then go, straight into like this new role. What was that first 2 weeks like?
The opposite of relaxed, because the team that I'm working with, we're all a group of contractors, so we're coming to do a specific job for a specific amount of time, and everything was already in motion when I started. So I thought that the 2 weeks would be chill and like getting to know everyone, getting to know what I was doing, but it was just really full on from the very start, getting thrown in the deep end.
Yeah.
Which was really interesting. Not something I've experienced too much before, but it was a very good learning curve.
What was the learning curve that you went through there?
Just to be confident, I guess, because whenever I start something new, I'm always a bit like, oh, what am I doing? Don't know what I'm doing. But I don't think there was really any chance to have that feeling in this job, because from day one it was like, all right, here you are. This is what you're doing. Read this and now get going. So
start designing, do something creative. And you're like, where do I even start?
Yeah.
And because obviously uni life, we have a bit of freedom, you get class here and there. What was it like transitioning then into a 9 to 5, Monday to Friday?
It was a big shift. I think it was more stressful when I found out it would be at 8:30 to 4:30 and I'd have to wake up earlier.
You're not an early riser.
Well, I try to be, but it shocked me, I have to say. I am a real procrastinator. So,
Aren't we all?
So like at Open Lab it was good because I had to like record what I was doing for like every hour that I was there. And then at uni I would just kind of like float around. I'd tell myself I was doing work, but like I wasn't really. And then going to like a government job, it just feels like a lot more pressure, so I was very focused. It was basically the complete opposite of how I work at uni. There was no like brainstorming with other people or like having a few days or like weeks, I guess, to come up with concepts. Just do it.
Yeah. Full-time work and like going into your job. Was it what you expected?
It was crazy. It was so weird. It's just so different. I'm not sure if it's just government in general, but it's just really different.
So in your core team, how many people are there?
5.
And who do you deal with the most out of those 5 people?
I actually think it's pretty even. Yeah, we all bounce around. Like everything kind of goes through me before it's being used. I get to see all of them quite evenly.
And within that team, are there particular people who have particular roles?
Yep, so there's my manager, she's like the project manager. She looks over everything. And then there's me, and then there's 2 service designers and a business analyst. But I'm the only visual communication designer.
I would love to know what the difference is in your team, what you do as a visual designer and what they do as a service designer, because I know that can cross over sometimes. So, what's the difference between your 2 roles?
The service designers definitely do more research. They are always going out, like they've done heaps of interviews, running workshops, gathering insights is a big thing, sorting the insights.
So kind of the strategy stuff, would you say, in a way as well?
Definitely, yep. Right now we're in the process of seeing how the office works, how people in New Zealand perceive the office and what they do. And then from there, they develop personas, and there's been some journey mapping going on as well. They do very much the research and development and getting the content. And then I get given the content and then make it look digestible for the public. So I think the main difference from like Open Lab and uni would be just having to be more reliant on my own brain. And I kind of forgot about Pinterest as well. So I was just like, oh my God, where am I getting my ideas from? I've only got so much in my brain without it going dry.
So you felt like when you first began that you were putting all this pressure on yourself to create and make, and you didn't have other sources to pull from.
Yeah. I think I've discovered that I'm a real bouncer of ideas. So I think when I'm working, I work best if I'm in a group of people and I can be like, oh, what do you think of this? And then they can be like, what are you doing? But then just not having that was very strange. Quite a challenge.
How did you overcome that challenge?
Forcing my co-workers to look at my stuff, even though they're not visual people necessarily, but just getting an opinion, any opinion.
Maybe some of your projects, they're visual, but then they also have a business or an objective that you have to achieve. So those people that you are actually talking to as well still have a very in-depth knowledge around what you're trying to achieve as well.
Yeah.
So it's also counterbalancing that business aspect as well as, aligning it to the visual aspect of things. So I think that might be one of the hardest changes as well that goes on from university into the industry aspect of things.
Yeah, for sure, especially because it's such a high profile government organisation, I guess. It's very serious. All my uni work has always been quite fun. I like to have a bit of a laugh with the stuff I do, so it was very different.
That's so interesting, and it's as a designer, finding that balance between being modern and fresh and having this great design and then catering to your audience. Do you find that balance hard?
I find it's a very different style to what I'm used to. I feel like I might be being a bit rude here, but I feel like government is quite a dry area to work in. Been doing user personas, which is really fun and really cool. And at uni, I would probably do a little illustration, a little doodle or something. But then when I did that for these ones, my manager was like, no, we have to be taken seriously. You can't just chuck a little drawing in there. Just remove it.
And I think, it's interesting because it's we see it coming from this crazy fun background in university. We see it as dry, but you can flip it on its head and they have to appeal to absolutely as many people as possible and everyone in New Zealand. So they try and keep everything as plain as possible to not cut out any groups.
The target audience is just massive.
So that's so interesting because obviously here at uni we really try and focus on one audience and one target group to really make our projects niche and well
and I feel
researched.
Going through uni, the further we got along, the more niche the audiences got as well. At the start, I feel your audience could have been like, oh, middle-aged people in New Zealand. But then towards the end, it would be like middle-aged Pākehā people who have one child. Like, it's just very, very narrow. And then just going back into the super wide range is a bit strange.
And it's always harder as well, targeting more people than one.
Yeah, we always talk about at work that we have like an 80% range because we work really fast. We try to do everything to appeal to 80% of people and try to get it 80% done or 80% being good rather than perfecting it.
It's like efficient.
Yeah.
And still 80% of the population of New Zealand is huge.
You had an idea around what you were creating at university. Then you got plonked into this government internship, which was a completely different audience and a different way of working. What do you think would have made that transition into that space a lot more easier for yourself?
I think just awareness. I never expected to work in government is probably the first thing. And I think I went through uni having fun, having a definite vibe around my work, and then at Open Lab it was still fun as well. I just felt like I would always be in that world because I had another internship at Scouts before Open Lab, but that was also quite a fun, like they work with kids, so it's very like, it's nothing too serious. From my 3 design experiences, I was just like, oh, cool, this is what it will always be like. And then it wasn't.
Yeah, and I feel like that is because this vibe and this funness you talk about is like your personality and that's who you are. So, of course, that shines through your work. And obviously those types of places, like we like to have a fun environment at Open Lab and like you said at Scouts, align with you. And I think that's the reality of coming into the university, and I think a lot of people go, I'm going to work in a cool design agency with like a ping pong table, and you think of like Google offices, and then you get here and you realise that design affects so much more and so many other businesses, and that there is so many jobs and avenues to go down. And I guess this is cool that you get to experience this and learn and maybe figure out what you do and don't want.
Would you find that interpersonal stuff completely different or a new dynamic that you haven't really come across before in the design industry? Because it's not just about being a designer as in you're designing stuff, but you're also having to work in a team with a whole lot of people that have different, personalities and all that kind of stuff. So that interpersonal stuff and maybe asking the right questions at the right time and getting the right information from each person to shape what you need to do correctly. Is that a new experience for you?
Because at uni we did all those group projects, I think having different opinions and that kind of thing isn't a big deal. That set me up pretty well for that kind of thing. But I think the main problem for me when it comes to the communication is just being not afraid, but like I don't really reach out and ask as many questions as I should. Definitely not in January and like first part of February. So I think it's just you really need to be aware of if you don't know something, just ask, even though you're not being dumb or anything. Because I know at Open Lab we had heaps of discussions about that. You're always like, oh, just ask, like no question is a dumb question. I found it really easy to ask questions there. I think it's maybe because both of you are more senior designers and you know what's going on, and I could see you all the time. One of the reasons why I'm always holding back in my current job is because everyone just is so busy all the time. And I think that's also comes down to the nature of the sprint program. And my manager always says, like, just call me if you have any questions. If I'm not at my desk, just call me. But, like, I can see her calendar and she's in meetings a lot. Yeah. Same with my teammates. So I think I just need to do it. But it's hard.
Yeah. From my experience when I first went into industry as well, I used freehand when I was at university. When I went in to get my first job, I had to all of a sudden switch to a new software InDesign that had just come out. It was like the second series of InDesign, so it was like still like a massive
C4,
like a massive document. And I was like CS2.
Oh my gosh!
It's kind of like that whole thing where you go, I have to upskill real fast, real suddenly. and still have to have the confidence and the know-how that it's still going to turn out to be all good at the end of it as well. And it's that whole confidence or that self-awareness that you have got all the skills that you've got, that you've learnt over the years, and it's just working out how to mould that into this new environment that you're working in now, because you've got everything that you need.
I feel like I keep forgetting that though in this job. I think being surrounded by people who are so smart, like lawyers and people who have been, like all my teammates have been in the workforce for longer than I have, like coming in really inexperienced and just kind of having people look at my work is really intimidating. So I'm like, oh.
And I think that's just a learning curve for anyone going into their first job, and especially a design job, because what we do is quite foreign to a lot of people, and so obviously we're aware of that, and we're a bit intimidated because we don't want to be judged, because that's exactly what, you know, it needs to happen for something to be critiqued or move forward. But I think every time we talk to someone or we mentor someone, it's always ask, because in the long run it's efficient for them, because then you're not getting it wrong, and you're you know, you're learning, and then you're getting better. And I think it's really just having that confidence in yourself to just ask, and feeling a little bit like stupid or whatever for that time, but because you've asked, you're clear, you know what you're doing, and then you can do an awesome job.
It took me a bit of time when I was at uni to be like, hey guys, here's my work, what do you think about it? Like, not because I was afraid of criticism or anything, but I just didn't want people to think that I was shit.
Yep.
And I feel like because I'm in this new environment and everyone's so opinionated, I feel like I don't want to show people sometimes, because I don't want them to be like, oh, who is this young girl coming in doing all this stuff, thinking she's cool?
When it comes to visual communication design, every single person can have a opinion on that piece of work, because everyone thinks that they know best about design or how something could look. So at the end of the day, designers always have a really tough job of convincing people when everyone has an opinion on certain things. So a lawyer could come in and go, oh, that colour's pink, I don't like that. But yet you can't go to the lawyer and go, that law that you just kind of blah, blah, blah doesn't work.
Yeah,
kind of
that's
thing.
so true,
you know,
yeah. I never thought of it like that. But
we kind of touched on this with our last interview with Dylan, but I think there's something really powerful in that someone can come up and say, I don't like that pink because it's pink, but then you can fire back and go, it's pink because it symbolises the brand colour and it aligns with this person and our target audience. And I guess that's where the confidence comes from, is like, you've spent 4 years learning design. When we're at university, it's very subconscious, like, we know why we do something, but we never really, it's only until like a lecturer or someone questions it, and then that's when you pipe up and you're like, oh, I did it because of this. But then you're getting back into that routine of knowing why you've done something, and then you'll feel better by doing it.
Yeah, and I think also because I work with such strong-minded, confident people, like not in the wider office, but just in my team, sometimes when I show stuff, I'm like, this is this because it's this. They'll come back at me and be like, but it shouldn't be. It should be like this because of this.
Is it more a sense that, okay, you've got this opinion, but maybe it's up to you to distill what they're actually trying to get at and fire back more questions so you become more informed about that design decision that they want to go down? That will help discussion happen around that, as opposed to you feeling shot down because they've just got something where they've got a really strong opinion on something. It's kind of like, how do you question that, or how do you come back with some kind of questions to break down that, to work out what they're actually trying to get at? Because you, in the end, might be right, but it could have been just a slight tweak that you needed to make to it or something like that.
I think it was first year, and one of our lecturers, he showed us some logos, and they were just like your usual, like McDonald's, Shell, and I can't remember which logo it was specifically, but he asked the class, is this a good logo? And it was like ugly, and so everyone said no. And then he goes, well, it's a good logo because it's representing what it needs to and it's communicating what it needs to, but our first year brains like couldn't wrap our head around that. And I think this is just reminding me of which position you're in now, which is that the design might not be as fun, or it might not be like as aligned, but it's doing its job. And I think, that's a hard thing to get used to, because a lot of designers see the design as a reflection of themselves, because, we've made it, we've created it. So it's really hard in industry to like let go of that. And I know I had to learn that in Open Lab, like in the past 3 years, when I'm working on a brand that's not usually as pretty or as aligned as I want it to be, but I have to let that go. It's still a good piece of design and it's doing what it needs to, but it's just not appealing to me, but it's appealing to who it needs to. What would you say has been like a recent challenge for you?
Recently, my team that I work with, we have all been scattered throughout 2 floors. And like, I know other people around the office, but they're all lawyers and they're all very like professional. Not all of them, but
most of them.
Yeah, I feel like I know my team really well. So that has been quite challenging, actually. It's like I've just gotten comfortable and then we're like all over the place again.
Like your security blanket's been ripped away.
Yet again. Yeah.
Do you find like there's a weird gap or like bridge between designers and not designers and you and your team?
I think it's a little bit tricky for our team. We're doing like a transformation piece. A lot of people are really resistant to us anyway, just because they don't want to change. But then my manager did say that this is the best place she's ever worked in terms of people coming on board.
What is the handover? Does your team all get together and have a conversation around how it all works? Or do the service designers give you any kind of intel around certain things?
This has actually been a huge challenge for us as a team, because obviously this is my first government role. I'm not really used to this situation, but I think what happens is my manager has an idea of what she wants, but she also really likes to give us creative freedom, which is really cool. I really enjoy that part of the job. But sometimes the service designers will do their part of the job, and then usually the handover from them is in an email, a note about what it is they want. From there, I do it. Usually it's all wrong. So,
or it hasn't particularly delivered or hit the mark
for
service designers or for your project manager?
Project manager.
Okay.
So I think right now, there's a balance that we're trying to reach between having creative freedom and being independent, the work that's being done, and then what my manager is visualizing for the project. So sometimes if it's not communicated very clearly at the start, or I always think of it as like 2 ships in the night. My manager is saying something and then the service designer might be like, yep, got it, but like completely different, but they think that they're both on the same page.
And it's like an interesting process coming from what we're used to, which is a lot of talking, meeting, like we always want to be super clear, to then having information passed to you through email, which loses that humanness.
Sometimes we do have a bit more of a conversation, but sometimes the conversation is really rushed and there's no time for clarification.
And would you just say that's the nature of the environment you're in and like the job, and so that's kind of something?
For sure. Basically we do like month-long sprint. So from the 5 people in our team, there's usually about 4 or 5, depending on who else in the office is running projects within the big project. We split the month into 4 weeks, and then the first week is like preparation for our big office-wide workshop. And then from that workshop, the next week is spent getting insights and gathering information and everything from that workshop. And then we do a week of like user testing and iterations. And then the last week is when it comes to me. It goes through the getting everything looking a particular way. And then we present it back to the office. And then next week it just starts all over again. From the start of a month to the end of the month, everyone is focusing on their own project and their own goal for that month. So it might be like in January, one of the projects was conducting a whole heap of interviews with different government departments and lawyers and vendors and that kind of stuff. and then creating personas and then creating journey maps. But also because it's such a short period of time, especially because I think January was particularly hard because we were still getting used to what we were doing. And then it was a shorter month as well because of the holidays. So it was a really, really fast-paced piece of work. There wasn't really heaps of time to discuss what exactly was going on as a whole team.
You have now stepped into an organisation that has got its own look and feel and its own values and all that kind of stuff. And you've had to come from a space of uni where it was all about, this is my project, this is how I want to represent it, blah, blah, blah. And then all of a sudden you're jumped into this area where it's someone else's business, someone else's brand guidelines, and you have to reshuffle your thinking of how to align it and tell stories based around that perception.
I feel like that is still true. They have an audience already, but I think it's very interesting, the project that we're doing. The overall thing is a full, like, rebranding isn't really the right term, but that's kind of what we're doing.
Is it like a brand refresh?
Or reposition?
It's, probably a reposition. Part of what we're trying to do is make people see the value of the office existing. Yeah. So like you mentioned,
like values and repositioning it.
We've come up with new values and like a purpose statement and everything. So it's creating a brand or an identity for something that already exists.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, very weird. But
so I think when you look at the overall picture of you are doing and what your day-to-day activities might be to get along that path, the day-to-day stuff might seem like so blasé, not creative, boring, maybe. But
putting words in your mouth.
Yeah, I am. But the overall picture is pretty exciting because you're actually helping to reposition a new organisation, and you're the person that's behind that.
Well, I'm one
of many.
Yeah. No, it's very exciting.
How do you handle stress?
I mean, everyone who I work with has been saying, "Oh, you're so chill, you're so relaxed. Like, you're never flustered." And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, I feel very flustered all the time, but maybe I just don't show it outwardly. But in terms of handling stress, geez, I don't really do much.
You do have a very calm sense about you, Christina.
No, I was talking to a lecturer and she told me to go for some walks, get some fresh air. Mm-hmm. So on a Friday, when it's just me and one other person from my team in the office, we will go and get lunch outside. Sometimes I meet my friend and have lunch outside. Nice. Basically just getting outside.
Totally agree, and that's exactly what me and Michael do. We do it every day. We just go for a walk around the campus and then we're like, life has been given to us because, fresh air, breathing, using your body.
Makes you drink water.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Every day I have like my little notebook and every day I like write the date down and then I draw like these 6 little boxes so I can like cross them out when I've had a glass of water.
Oh my god, that's so smart.
Oh,
and fun.
Would be. I'd probably cross out like 2 a day. It's really bad, but I'm trying. I think hydration is key.
What are the things that you feel you've really excelled at and learnt from since your time there?
Although I'm not amazing at it still, I think my communication has really improved, and just making sure that I know what I'm doing before I even start doing it has been a really good lesson. Honestly, I still feel the same. Like, I still feel quite a bit lost at times.
Which is totally normal to feel in a new job, a new environment. Getting clear before starting a project is so key. Michael will have to explain something about 10,000 times to me before I'm like starting. He'll wheel over to my desk and tell me, and then he'll go to wheel back, and I'm like, no.
I'm back.
I'm like, what? So totally key. It does not matter how many times you need to ask the same question, but getting clear on what you need to do before doing it, because then you can just get it done and you feel confident in doing it. Because I know what it's like when you think you know what you're doing and then it gets down to it and you're just like, I don't know.
Yeah,
and then you just create something that you're unsure about.
Yeah, or you could just sit at your desk for like an hour thinking you know what you're doing. Yeah. And then it's like, what?
But it's also assumptions from other people as well. Like, you think you've got it, or the other people got it and they're going, she's got it, but yet you don't actually know fully what's going on in their minds.
Yeah.
And there might be a hell of a lot that they haven't actually told you because it's just assumed that you know that, but you haven't been in their head for, you know, the past month that you've been working on that project for. So, like, how you expect to know without asking those kind of key questions and that kind of thing.
I think that's, a really good point of what I have learned. Because everyone's very invested in their own project. And then usually it's like, if I'm lucky, a week before it has to go out. And they're like, right, here you go. I think also the other thing, just what we were talking about before with the communication and the line of the chain of command, and how I get the projects coming through me. The other thing that has really thrown me off has been, like, at uni we have an actual brief and we have exactly what it is supposed to be, what we are achieving, what format sometimes it is. And then in this job, hey, I've sent you a Word doc. Can you please make it look pretty? Like, I have so many emails that are just like, subject for you to make pretty. Yeah. So it's like really, really different. The information level is just so not there sometimes.
It's like people almost undervalue you and what you can do because they say, can you make it pretty? And instead of being like, can you make this digestible? Can you make this clear? Can you make this more targeted to my audience? And that's everything that you're doing when you're making it, air quotation marks, pretty. Yeah. Which I think is super interesting.
Yeah, I think we've tried to ask people to give me stuff. And I've said, like, can you give me a brief, like your purpose, what day you need it by? But it just hasn't really sunk in yet. But I'm working on it.
Yeah, and I think persistence is key as well on that aspect of things. And it also sounds like you are the last man or woman at the end of the job. Like, they've got 3 weeks of build up to
it's
you.
Like Chinese
and then,
whispers.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden it's like, boom, Christina, you've got to do this right now.
Yeah.
And I think it's also a learning curve for government and other industries that have someone in their team like you, is that you might ask, what's your purpose, what's your why, what's your audience? And they'll go, well, why do you need that? You're just making it look pretty. But they don't understand how those two things correlate. And that can help impact our design and how something can look.
So the value of design and the value of design thinking.
Yeah. Which is like your key. It's like you have an opportunity to be like, hey, I need this because of this. Put your foot down.
And I think also that kind of relates back to what we were talking about before with people having opinions. And it's like the value of design isn't necessarily on their mind. It's more like the aesthetics, but not the function, which is really different.
I think is a cool takeaway, even for you, just to go back and remember that thing.
Yeah, like there's been this one time in particular where I was doing this very exciting document that was going on the wall, and it was basically just a piece of work that was explaining what one of the challenges was going to be for the month and then who was on their team for the workshop day. Oh, and this was going up on the wall for the entire month so people could know what everything relating to it would be.
Yeah.
And the request was to have the people's names really big so that then they could find where they would be on the day. But I was like, no, the challenge, like the how might we statement should be the central thing, because after that first day, no one is going to be like, oh, I remember when I was in that team.
Yeah.
But that was like quite a tense push-pull moment
And
in my team.
And did you win?
I did win.
Yes.
But only because we ran out of time.
Still a win.
Yeah.
But going forward, has those posters been created again for a different sprint?
Yeah, and we keep doing them
See?
my way.
So
Awesome.
you've won, girl.
So obviously you got an internship through us and you were able to get some experience in a studio, and now you're in government. Did you go for any other interviews when you left uni?
Yes, I had one interview. My problem was I just really liked working at Open Lab, and I was like, I'm just going to ride this until, like, as long as humanly possible. And then once that finishes, I guess I'll find a job. So I didn't actively look, but I did end up getting contacted through Exposure for one interview, which went really well. I had a nice chai latte. They said that they had freelance work and it was all very exciting. but just haven't heard back from them.
How did you find the whole process? Like, did you feel looked after getting this job, and do you still feel like supported from us now?
Yep, I found the process great. Michael emailed me a TED talk about power stances.
Power poses.
Power poses. And I did a power pose in the bathroom for a solid 2 minutes in like a tiny bathroom cubicle before my interview. It was a very small cubicle as well. My arms were like sticking out over the top of the door. And I was like, please no one come in. But
we're going to have to link that TED talk in the show notes, I think.
It's such a good TED talk. Highly recommend. I was having a bit of a rough day at work the other day, and I went to the bathroom and I did a power pose until someone came in. I was just standing there like, yes, I've got this.
Did it work? Did it make you feel better?
Well, I didn't really talk to anyone for the rest of the day, so I felt better, but it didn't.
Inside.
Yeah. But in general, aside from the power posing, I have found it a really good process to go through. Like, leading up to the interview, it was really good. After the interview was really nice as well. I can't remember if I called Adrian or she called me, but we had like a good chat about how it went, and it was just really nice. And then I see Adrian from time to time. Like, we meet up occasionally, and that's really cool.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that I can always like text or call if I'm having a rough one. So yeah, I think it's a lot easier than if I had just gone into a government role by myself. The culture change would be really difficult to deal with by myself.
Do you have any plans of what's going to happen after the 6 months, or do you have ideas?
I'm going to Fiji. That's my only plan right now.
Well-deserved holiday.
Oh, I'm very excited.
Good end game, mate.
Yeah, that's smart.
Job-wise, again, I haven't really thought about it. I think I would like to continue in government for a wee bit, just to see if I can...
Continue that experience while you're there.
Yeah, and I think it would be really good to just see how far I can push myself in a different environment. But I also really enjoy change, so I wouldn't be opposed to doing something again completely different, because I just like mixing it up.
And seeing how both sides work, and then potentially working out where you feel comfortable or want to belong in.
Yeah.
And change is always key to anyone in their personal development, because it pushes us to get out of our comfort zones and maybe learn something that we hadn't before.
Yeah. And this episode has shown that transition into a job can be a very difficult, sticky, fun, creative, but also hard place to be in.
Just want to say it's not terrible. Like, I feel like I've been quite like, oh, it's dry, it's a challenge, I have my rough days, but I also really enjoy my job. So if anyone's thinking of working in government, don't be afraid. You just have to be confident.
If you were in your position before this all happened, what would you tell yourself?
I would say be confident. Don't be afraid to ask for help or clarification. Don't forget about Pinterest, and remember that you are good at what you're doing.
Thanks for tuning in, and if you want to see any more from us, you can head over to our Instagram, which is OpenLabNZ, or head to our website, and all the details are in the show notes. Can't wait to talk to you soon.
Bye.
Ka kite!